Deep inside the ancient jungle, where giant trees reach up to touch the sky, there still exists one of the most dangerous and extraordinary traditions: hunting for wild honey. This is not a job for the faint-hearted. It requires strength, precision, and nerves of steel. Only those who are willing to risk their lives dare to face thousands of furious wild bees to harvest their golden treasure. This is the story of a seasoned jungle hunter, a man who has spent his life chasing wild honey. On this particular day, he faced one of the closest encounters with death in his lifetime, when he attempted to harvest a massive hive of wild bees clinging high on a towering tree. The journey into the jungle. At the break of dawn, the forest hunter prepared for his expedition. His tools were simple but vital: a long rope to secure his body, a razor-sharp machete, a woven bamboo basket for collecting honey, bundles of green leaves to make smoke, and a small lighter that had accompanied him for years. For him, these were not just tools, they were his lifeline. He set off with a few companions from his village, while others could help gather honey from the ground. Only he had the skill and courage to climb the towering trees where giant wild hives rested. The path was harsh and untamed. The group pushed through thorny bushes, crossed muddy swamps, and clambered over sharp rocks. Birds chirped above, insects buzzed from every corner, and the rustling leaves whispered the secrets of the jungle. It was a symphony of wilderness, both beautiful and intimidating. After more than 2 hours of trekking, the team reached a giant ancient tree standing proudly in the middle of a clearing. When they lifted their gaze, they froze in awe. Hanging from one of its colossal branches was a massive hive of wild bees, dark, thick, and shaped like an enormous blanket suspended in the air. Thousands of bees swarmed around it, their wings beating in unison, producing a deep, thunderous hum that echoed across the forest. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Preparing for battle, the hunter tightened the rope around his waist. Checking every knot carefully, he tested his machete by slicing through a small branch. Its blade was sharp enough to cut cleanly with one stroke. Then he lit a bundle of green leaves. Thick smoke began to rise, slowly drifting toward the hive. Smoke was the only thing that could distract the bees long enough to approach them. But it was never enough to truly stop their rage. The villagers stood below in tense silence. They knew the risk. They had seen people fall to their deaths or collapse from hundreds of stings. The hunter himself carried scars all over his arms and face, living proof of many previous battles. Taking a deep breath, he looked up at the hive. To him, this was not only about harvesting honey. It was a test of willpower, a moment to prove his courage against nature's fiercest defenders. The ascent. Slowly, he began to climb. His calloused hands gripped the rough bark, while his feet searched for small notches and cracks. The tree was so massive that 3 men together could barely wrap their arms around it. Moss and damp bark made every step slippery and treacherous. The rope around his waist gave some reassurance, but in reality, his life depended on his strength and focus. As he climbed higher, the wind picked up, swaying the branches. The ground below grew smaller and smaller until it looked like a patchwork of green and brown. His heartbeat pounded in his chest, but his determination never faltered. Finally, he reached the height of the hive. The buzzing was deafening now, a constant roar of wings that filled the air around him. Hundreds of bees were already circling his head, darting dangerously close to his eyes and ears. A brush with death, he raised the smoking leaves toward the hive. The smoke spread outward, forcing some of the bees to retreat, but the majority became even more aggressive. They swarmed around him like a living storm, their stingers ready to strike. Then, disaster struck. The branch beneath his foot snapped with a sharp crack. His entire body lurched sideways, and for one horrifying moment, he was hanging in midair, clinging to the tree with only one hand. Below him stretched an empty drop of nearly 30 meters. The villagers gasped in terror, their shouts echoing through the forest. For the hunter, time seemed to stop. His fingers burned as they dug into the bark. His muscles trembled, and his breath came in ragged gasps. He knew that if he slipped now, death was certain. With a desperate surge of strength, he pulled himself back onto a sturdier branch. His chest heaved, his heart thundered, but he had survived, barely, and just as he regained his balance, the bees attacked. They swarmed his face and neck, stinging relentlessly. His vision blurred, his skin burned, and every nerve screamed in pain. Yet he clenched his teeth, shielding himself with the smoke while swinging his machete to cut pieces of the hive. Harvesting the giant hive, with swift, practiced strokes, he sliced sections of the hive free. Each cut released streams of golden honey, glistening in the sunlight as it dripped down his arms. The scent was rich, sweet, and intoxicating. Below, his companions shouted with joy as large chunks of honeycomb fell into the bamboo basket. They scrambled to collect every piece, careful not to waste a single drop. But above them, the battle continued. The hunter was still surrounded by thousands of furious bees. Every move he made was a fight, against gravity, against pain, against fear. After nearly an hour of exhausting struggle, the hive was finally harvested. His arms shook violently, his face was swollen from countless stings, and sweat drenched his entire body. But he had done it. He had conquered the wild bees once more. Returning from the brink, descending the tree was no easier than climbing it. His limbs felt weak, and his vision swam, yet with slow, careful movements, he made his way down until his feet finally touched solid ground again. The villagers rushed to him immediately. Some applied crushed herbal leaves to his swollen stings, while others handed him water. He collapsed onto the earth, breathing heavily, his body trembling with fatigue and pain. But when he looked at the overflowing baskets of golden honey, his eyes sparkled with pride. It wasn't just food or trade. It was proof that he had survived yet another battle with death, and that he had the strength to endure what few others dared to face. The meaning beyond the danger. As the group carried the honey back through the fading light of the forest, laughter and chatter filled the air. The hunter, though battered and aching, felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. For him, every scar, every sting, every moment of terror was a reminder that life itself is fragile. But it was also a reminder that courage can triumph over fear. The story of this near-death experience while catching wild bees is not merely about honey. It is about the unbreakable bond between humans and nature, about resilience in the face of danger, and about the willpower that drives people to achieve the impossible. The sweet taste of wild honey may fade on the tongue, but the memory of hanging between life and death, surrounded by furious bees high above the jungle floor, will last forever.